What's up everybody, my name is Floes, and today I'm going to cover 6 tips to help you min-max Arcane, so let's get right into it. I'm going to start off with a banger here. This tip will allow you to start off pulls with more than one clearcasting stack, so if you didn't know, Cone of Cold and Frost Nova both cost mana and both can proc clearcasting stacks. So whenever you want to fish for clearcasting procs, use Arcane Explosion until you get your first stack, then use Cone of Cold and Frost Nova for chances at extra stacks. I personally use this in raid on pre-pulls and before Mythic Plus dungeons start, and it doesn't always proc, but when it does, it's massive. Next up is Rune of Power. Rune of Power's radius is actually a lot larger than it seems. You might think it's just a tiny rune and you're confined to its animation, but you can actually move a couple more yards out and still benefit from the damage boost. One trick to making the most out of your rune is baiting mechanics off center to one side of the rune. So if you stand in the middle of your rune and a boss AoE happens to target you, you might have to move out of your rune entirely. However, if you stand off to one side and that same AoE gets baited onto you, you can safely retreat to the other side of your rune and still get that buff uptime. Next we have Barrage calculating damage on cast. So this one's a bit unintuitive, but this is actually how most spells in WoW work. Spell damage is calculated on cast rather than when they actually land on your target. This is unimportant for spells like Arcane Blast or Fire Blast to hit instantly, but for spells that have travel time like Arcane Barrage, you don't actually have to land Barrage inside your buff window, you just have to cast it. So if we take a look at Arcane Surge here, you'll notice Barrage lands and hits for 12k, non-crit. Now I cast that same Barrage right before the buff drops, and it lands when the buff already faded. Outside of any baseline spell variants, you'll notice Barrage hits for pretty much the same amount. So this is useful when you want a Barrage on the last global of a buff, you can just cast it milliseconds before the buff falls, and not lose any efficiency. Tip number 4 is using Shifting Power for defensives or utility. Most mages will only really take into account Shifting Power for reducing the cooldown of their damaging spells, but you can get some free value here by popping low cooldown defensives or utility spells beforehand. So if you know you'll be popping Shifting Power soon, you can cast a Prismatic Barrier before shifting and get it reduced from a 25-second cooldown to about a 9-second cooldown. This also applies to Counterspell. If you take the quick-witted talent that reduces your Counterspell cooldown by 4 seconds whenever you successfully interrupt a target, this cooldown reduction paired with Shifting Power will lower your Counterspell cooldown to only 4 seconds, so on dungeons like Ruby Life Pools or No Coup Defensive that have an absurd amount of kicks required, this tech will come in extremely handy. Next tip is increasing Ice Flow's maximum charges from 3 to 5. So in Ice Flow's tooltip it states that it has a maximum of 3 charges on a 30-second recharge. However, there's currently a grace period where if you cast Ice Flows about a half a second before the end of a spell, you can keep moving and not consume the previous stack. This means in total you can have up to 5 Ice Flows charges at one time, so make sure you use this to optimize your movement. And lastly, we have casting while moving with Shimmer. So you may or may not know this, but there's about a half-second grace period after casting Shimmer that allows you to move while casting. Now situations where you use this might not always pop up or be completely obvious, but here's an example of me using it in a 22 no coup this week. As you may know, the boss Tira has a cast called Repel that knocks you back upon completion. I start channeling Shifting Power as she's casting Repel, and normally I'd get knocked back during this cast and lose a tick of Shifting Power. However, as you'll see, I Shimmer at the very last second, and because I can move after casting Shimmer, my Shifting Power doesn't get interrupted, and I complete the full channel. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Whether you're new or experienced with Arcane, I hope some part of this video helped you. And if you are new to Arcane, make sure to head over to the description where you'll find a link to my Arcane guide, as well as a cheat sheet that'll help you learn the rotation, and a video with a list of all my weak Rs and add-ons so you can grab any part of my UI you're interested in. And if all that wasn't enough, make sure to leave a comment with any questions or concerns you have. I try to reach every comment within 24 hours. So that's it for this tips and tricks video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support, and I wish you a very nice day. Take care.